Bernhard's door is a report found online which describes a dream phenomenon in which the dreamer discovers a new doorway or room in a familiar location. I had taken an interest in it because of its eerie description of a type of dream that I personally had a lot of experience with, and soon learned that apparently many others had as well. The image, shown on screen, reads as follows. The professors responsible for the analysis of the collected data believe that everyone has, at some point, experienced Bernhard's door. 32% of subjects interviewed, out of a sample size of 1,300, reported experiencing one or more dreams during the previous 5 years in which the door was present. 16% recalled the door from childhood dreams occurring at least 10 years prior to the interview. An additional 19% were able to recall the dream only when placed under hypnosis. 67% of interviewees have experienced the phenomena. In most experiences, dreams begin in the same house or home the dreamer occupied during their childhood. The dreamer is alone, wandering their home, sometimes searching for something. The door is discovered in a hidden, inaccessible place, most commonly behind a large piece of furniture such as a bookshelf or cabinet. The dreamer feels a strong sense of déjà vu, as if they'd known the door existed but had forgotten about it for years. In addition, they feel they can almost remember what's inside. The dreamer is tempted to remove the obstruction and enter the passage. The door itself is almost always heavy and difficult to open. Sometimes a key is required, which the dreamer inexplicably has in his or her possession. Once opened, a long stairway is revealed, which leads up, or in rare cases, down, and out of sight. As the dreamer ascends, a growing sense of dread and irrational terror is felt. Reports grow inconsistent from this point forward, with descriptions varying greatly. One particular scenario is reported with some frequency, in about 27% of cases. In these instances, the dreamer comes to a room at the end of the stairway. Here they find an old toy, painting, or photograph, which they seem to faintly recall from childhood. As the dreamer approaches the object, it suddenly comes to life. The dreamer becomes aware that the object is evil, and will attempt some violent or malicious intent towards them. Reports vary on following events, with some dreamers being killed by the object, while others run away while the object chases them. Upon waking, many subjects, 27%, claim to have heard a very deep voice speak brief, indecipherable words. In rare instances, only 4%, the dreamer's spouse or partner has also heard the voice. While the source of the sound is never seen, many subjects have described the voice as coming from inside the wall. Other common after effects are brief feelings of fear, anxiety, and a sense of having been marked. Note: some subjects, upon remembering the dream, felt the desire to return to their childhood home and search for the door or evil object to see if it truly exists. Recently, I decided to search for this, wondering whether it's based in real research or simply a creepypasta. Searching the name Bernhard's door turned up nothing but the original document and readings of said document, as well as the occasional post from someone asking if it's real. Because of this, I'm inclined to believe that the document itself is a work of fiction, and that, if the phenomenon has been studied, it isn't known by the name Bernhard's door. But the fact still remains. I have had dreams like this, many times even. In the earliest instance I can remember, when I couldn't have been older than 7 or 8, I was in the foyer of my family's shared vacation home. It was exactly the same, except for, in one corner, where there'd normally be a bare wall, a small room was jutting out. The room's walls had many small windows, covered with cheap plastic blinds so I couldn't see inside, but I could see dull fluorescent light coming through the slats. I approached the door, which was glass but also covered with blinds, and woke up before I could open it. When I woke up, I was confused. During the dream, I had been aware that I hadn't seen the room before, but it didn't feel out of place. It was like it had been there the whole time, and I somehow just didn't notice. I really wanted to know what was inside, and felt certain that it would be there if I went to look for it. I had many more dreams like this over the years, many of them at the same house, some not, sometimes an entire room, and sometimes just a door, but the feeling is always the same. I've asked friends and family about it, and each time, they've had at least one similar story to tell. During my online research, I even found a Redditor describing how they'd had such an experience as well, having only remembered it after reading the story. Redditor Jack Chancer wrote, "I'd like to tell you about a dream I had as a child that was pretty disturbing. Nothing in it was all that surprising or horrible in and of itself. It was that I blocked the memory completely for nearly 16 years until I stumbled upon an article called Bernhard's Door on B. The article read like a clinical study, rattling off figures and numbers that I can't really remember with much clarity, but the dream, my dream, which exactly matches the apparently all-too-common dream many people have at about the ages of 4 to 6-ish, is vivid and clear in my mind. When I was young, I loved to play in my grandparents' old antique house. Typically, I'd play with this toy cash register on the floor of the living room, near the oak main staircase, and close enough to the dining room and kitchen that I could be playing alone, but still feel surrounded by loving family at nearly any time of day. While I visited often, I never stayed the night there. I lived only a half-hour's drive away, so there wasn't any reason to. The exception to that was rather scarring. Let me take the time here to stress that my grandmother was perhaps the nicest person in the world, and my grandfather had been a good match for her before he passed away. Nothing that happened should reflect badly on either of them. As I lay in bed, I got bored and decided that I'd had enough of trying to sleep. Still in my PJs, I went downstairs to the living room. But instead of being full of love and life, it was cold, dark, and the shadows seemed sinister. Even more disturbing, there was a doorway under the main stairs that I had never noticed before. Somehow, the door seemed out of place there, even though it too was oak. The design seemed wrong. It was too short for adults to move through comfortably, and too thick for its height. I didn't want to, but I opened the door. My body almost didn't feel like it was my own. As the door swung open, the greatest horror I could imagine was behind it. I could feel it. But when I looked, all there was in the small room beyond was my toy register, sitting innocently, lit from above, like a beacon of hope in the dark room. Well, this is what I came down here for, right? I was tired of trying to sleep and wanted to play with my toys. I reached out to the register, and just before my fingers touched it, this feeling of malevolent evil grew unbearable, and it launched itself at me, cash drawer chomping for my little fingers hungrily. Suddenly I awoke, having been completely unaware that I was dreaming until that point. As I lay in bed, digesting all that had happened, a chorus of deep, demonic voices began booming from the walls of the guest room. I was completely rigid, unable to move anything but my eyes as they chanted. The tone was too low to understand, and the language might not have even been English, but I was certainly terrified. As soon as it stopped, I got out of bed and made my way downstairs for breakfast. The dream and the voices blissfully out of my mind. And that is the creepiest part of all of this for me. I'm not known for being forgetful. I've always been able to remember the exact order of events from months back when anything significant has happened, a skill I refined further as a night security officer. But this entire episode was simply gone from my memory, as though it never happened. For a decade and a half, until a few words on a page brought it all back. And then it was gone again until it randomly wasn't. In fact, any time I'm not actively thinking about it, I forget it ever happened to me until something brings it back, and I don't know why. And try as I might, I can't find the clinical paper titled Bernhard's Door anywhere. No one I've talked to has even heard of it. So, while it seems unlikely that the Bernhard's Door post is from a real study, it is very much inspired by a real phenomenon and probably experienced by the author as well. I'm very interested in learning more about this, so let me know in the comments. Have you experienced Bernhard's Door? Do you have any theories as to why such dreams are so common? Thanks for watching, and I look forward to hearing from you in the comments.